Hello and welcome to Women Veterans Alliance webinar. This is our first webinar, a Wednesday webinar of 2023, and it is fitting because today is International Women's Day, and we are so excited to have you all here for this webinar. And again, housekeeping, please remain on mute. This will be interactive, so you will have the opportunity to interact, whether via chat or unmuting yourself to interact with our speaker, Carrie, today. If you're not familiar with our organization, or actually, you know what, let me introduce myself. I'm Melissa Washington. I'm a Navy veteran, and I am the CEO and founder of Women Veterans Alliance. And Women Veterans Alliance, we connect women veterans with each other and resources. And one of those ways we connect is through our Wednesday webinar series. If you're not following us on social media, we're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And on Facebook, we do have a private Facebook group only for women veterans. So if you're on Facebook, you can find our group on there, but definitely like us on the other social media platforms and subscribe to our YouTube channel, as you can watch previous webinars, as well as you'll be able to see this webinar as well. Just to want to let you know some upcoming events that Women Veterans Alliance that we have. This Friday, I will be in Las Vegas for the Nevada Women Veterans Conference, and that evening we are having a meetup. So if you're in Las Vegas and you want to come to our meetup, or maybe you know some other women veterans that are in Las Vegas, let them know. We're going to be meeting up in Las Vegas on the 10th. Next Wednesday, our Wednesday webinar is the Focus Forward Fellowship from Purdue University. So you can definitely get on our website and find more information on that. The 22nd, right now it's tentative. It's the SBA certification. So if we have any veteran business owners that are looking to get certified, we're working with the SBA to get that confirmed. Then on the 23rd, the announcement will be coming out soon. We are having a women veteran author meet and greet where you'll be able to learn from and hear from 5 women veteran authors and learn about their books and how they started. And then on the 29th, our Wednesday webinar series. And again, if everybody can remain on mute, our Wednesday webinar series, we are going to wrap up March Women's History Month with the 688. If you're not familiar with these awesome women, definitely Google that, but you definitely want to come in and listen to the webinar series, as Colonel Edna Cummings is going to share with all of you about the 688. April 21st to the 23rd, VWise, when we will also be there in San Antonio, Texas. April 29th is our Women Veterans Engaged conference. It's available online and in person. May 5th, our Small Business Award application will open. On the 15th and the 17th, we have a couple events here in the Sacramento, California, events celebrating military women. Also to June 12th is Women Veterans Day, and it is the 75th anniversary that the Armed Force Integration Act was passed. So a lot of big stuff happening in June for women veterans. And September 8th through 10th is our signature event, the Unconference, which will be at the Tropicana in Las Vegas. Also, too, if you don't know, I also host a Women Veterans in Business radio show, which you can listen in live, and it's also recorded. So if you're interested in hearing from other women veteran business owners. And also, too, if you're a business owner, we are doing our annual verification of our business owner directory. We have the only online directory specifically for women veteran-owned businesses. And here's just some information on our Women Veterans Engage event. You can scan the QR codes that'll take you to this event. So April 29th, you can listen and watch online. And also there are several locations throughout the US that are our host locations. It's going to be an amazing event. It's called the Resilient You, Time to Recharge. And these women are going to be recharging you. And I think we all can use a little bit of a recharge. And then again, September 8th through the 10th is our Unconference in Las Vegas. If you haven't seen, we launched veteran.events. You can find calendar events, not only women veteran events, but all kinds of other events are posted on our calendar. Also, too, we have a listing of all the women veteran conferences are found on veteran.events. And we also have expanded to provide event services for any organization that is looking for some help in planning their and executing or managing their event. So without further ado, this is why we are all here. I want to introduce you all to Carrie Ward. She is a liaison specialist at Veterans History Project. And she's got a lot of really good information to share. And I'm so glad all of you are here today, because we need more representation of women in the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. So Carrie, I'm going to stop sharing and go ahead, and it's all yours. And there's all the awesome people that are on here.
I know. I was so excited to see so many amazing names. I'm just going to do a real quick check. Can everybody see my screen right now? And if for any reason you cannot, okay, I'm getting head nods. Excellent. And I love to keep the chat up. I've got a couple messages coming through. Hi, Carol Fowler. It's lovely to see you. So as Melissa mentioned, good afternoon. My name is Carrie Ward, and I am a senior liaison specialist with the Veterans History Project here at the Library of Congress. Essentially what that means is I get to work on the program, the planning, the development and implementation of strategies to help build our archival collections, and also to be able to help share some of those treasured collections with our general public. Most importantly, I get to work with individuals and organizations across the country to help make sure that they have the tools that they may need to make sure that they can help preserve the legacy of any of the veterans or Gold Star family members within their community. I want to, of course, say thank you so much to Melissa and to everybody at the Women Veterans Alliance. I'm always telling Melissa, she's always on the go. I'm never surprised by all of the different things that she's up to. And especially on International Women's Day, I want to say thank you to her, and thank you to all of you for joining us today and taking some time to listen a little bit more about this opportunity to make a really meaningful difference. It really is awesome to be celebrating International Women's Day with you all. It's a day for us to really focus on achievements of women who've helped to move the needle, whether that's socially, culturally, economically, and so on. And so it's just a super appropriate day to be having this conversation. Now, before we get started, before we even move on to the next slide, I'm going to ask, and this is a Scout's honor on this, if you could just take 1 minute and close your eyes and visualize, what do you think of when you hear the word veteran? You can open your eyes now. I'm going to show you what happened when I Googled that word. Feel free, I love to chat with you, so feel free to put stuff in the chat. What do you see when you take a look at this screen?
Veterans.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. We see, yep, a lot of white-haired men, one woman of color, no women. Now, this was just a quick search that I was doing, in preparation for this presentation, and I couldn't believe it. Today is International Women's Day. March is Women History Month, and it's definitely a time for our community, the veteran community, to draw some more attention to the 2 million women who've worn our nation's uniform. Women veterans are our family members. They're our friends, they're community leaders. They're those who've helped volunteer since before the Revolutionary War and helped shape the world that we live in. Oh, somebody is saying they can't see the screen. I'm going to ask those of you who I can see, can you give me a quick yes or no if you can see the screen? Yep. Okay. Yes. Taniki, I'm going to ask if you could maybe try to log out and log back in, and that may help solve the problem. If not, feel free to pop out again, and we'll make sure to get this to you a different way. So when we think about women veterans in particular, it's pretty easy to identify who a woman is who's in service. But once that uniform is removed, there's no haircut. There's not necessarily the quintessential image that springs to mind when we think of the term of a US military veteran. In fact, it's not uncommon for a woman veteran to get lectured about parking in a reserved for veterans spot, or to not be thanked on Veterans Day. It's not unusual for us, our staff. We have a really great opportunity to be able to travel around to different places across the country. And in doing so, a lot of times I'll ask the question of who here is a veteran? And when I ask that question, versus if I ask the question of who here served in the military, I get 2 different answers. Women veterans are not always thought of. They're frequently overlooked. And a lot of times they struggle even today to identify as veterans. Perhaps you're familiar with the statistic from the US Department of Veterans Affairs that estimates that 10% of our veteran population consists of women, and they are the fastest growing demographic in the veteran population. In fact, that number is projected to jump to 18% by 2040. And with that being said, I think it's imperative that we really heed the words. In fact, I think they're over at the Women's Memorial of World War II veteran and Army Nurse Lieutenant Anne Bream, who said, "Let the generations know that women in uniform also guaranteed their freedom, that our resolve was as great as the brave men who stood among us. And with victory, our hearts were just as full and beat just as fast as theirs." Now, it's my hope that after today, you can help us all to normalize what Americans see when they look at the word veteran. And part of the way that we do that here at the Library of Congress is by trying to offer a prominent and enduring platform that allows us to share the memories, reflections, and thoughts through our National Library with the Library of Congress. Man, you guys are so good with the chat. I can't quite keep up with it, but please do keep them coming. I'm going to go ahead and go on to the next slide. So who's been to the Library of Congress? I'm watching the chat very closely on this one. If anybody has been here before, I'd love to hear from you. I may be a little bit biased, but I do feel that this is the most beautiful building in Washington, D.C. Okay, as a kid, 8th grade. I think I did the 8th grade trip as well, Lacey. So you can see I've got the books behind me. I actually specifically came to this room today to offer you a little preview of the main reading room. And what you can see up on the screen is actually, it's called the Great Hall. And so again, understanding I may be a little bit biased, I really do feel like this is the most beautiful building in Washington, D.C., and it would be our great honor to welcome you to the Library of Congress. The photos that you see up on the screen are really just a preview to hopefully entice you, but they also share a lot about just behind this area, right back in that hallway, is something that's called the evolution of storytelling, or the evolution of the book. So for those of you who are familiar with the Gutenberg Bible, we actually have one of 3 perfect copies of the Gutenberg Bible right in that hallway. And up on the walls back there by the Gutenberg Bible are these lunettes or tympanons, which you can see in the corners. And the very first one on the left is showcasing oral tradition. And while that is a wonderful way for us to go ahead and pass down stories and traditions, we're missing something. It's a little bit like when we play that game Telephone. If anybody remembers that as a kid, if I start with Melissa and we go to Quinn and we go all the way around, we're going to have a different story by the time it reaches that last person, which is part of why the library puts such an emphasis on archiving and preserving those first person narratives. Storytelling is central to our human existence. It's central to our civilization. And even before we had these Zoom calls or cell phones, we were passing down stories because it helps us to preserve our culture so that we can better prepare for our future. The Library of Congress is the oldest federal and cultural institution, and we provide the world's preeminent reservoir of knowledge, providing unparalleled integrated resources to Congress and the American people. And I say that because, again, this is the People's Library. And so we do invite you not only to come in person, but to feel free to use the resources that we have available online at loc.libraryofcongress.gov. Now, those of you who are looking at my background may see books. However, if you're looking at that photo, you may not see books, and you may be saying, I'm confused. This is the Library of Congress. Where are all the books? And while we do have an impressive collection of over 51 million books, that's only a fraction of the 173 million items that the Library of Congress currently has. So perhaps not as well known, but equally as impressive are things like, if we have any cartographers, we have the first time the word America showed up on a map, and it's on the Walter Mueller map. If we have any comic book fans, we have the largest collection of comic books in the world. The National Film Registry We just had Joni Mitchell for the Gershwin Awards. So we have a wealth of music. We have some Stradivari violins. And if anybody saw Lizzo playing the glass flute, James Madison's glass flute, we have quite a variety of woodwinds as well. And of course, with the Veterans History Project, the thing that we focus on are those memories. So how did the Veterans History Project get started? Why are we here at the Library of Congress? To answer that question, I'm going to take you back to the year 2000, where Representative Ron Kind from Wisconsin was celebrating a Father's Day picnic. And as he's grilling burgers over here, he starts to hear his uncle, who was a Korean War veteran, and his father, who was a World War II veteran, starting to swap stories. And even though he grew up with these men and he thought he had heard all of their stories, he very quickly realized that there were things that he had never heard before. So realizing the magnitude of the moment, he ran inside and grabbed that ubiquitous camcorder a lot of us had back in the year 2000, and he starts recording. And he's not doing it necessarily for himself. He's not even preserving the moment for his uncle or his father, but he was doing it because he had 2 children. And he wanted to give them an opportunity to hear directly from their family members as to what their experiences were like. So coming back to Washington, D.C., he started speaking with other members of Congress, and it was unanimously supported to the point that by October 27th of that year, we had it unanimously signed into law by then President Bill Clinton, with the idea to get individuals and organizations across the country to sit down with the veterans in their lives, in their communities, and get to know them better. And then to voluntarily share what that conversation was with our National Library so that it could be archived and so that others would be able to learn from that. Our congressional mandate is to collect, preserve, and make accessible the firsthand recollections of US military veterans. In the latter part of 2016, we had that legislation amended to also include voices of families of the fallen through the Gold Star Family Voices Act. Now, our collection spans from World War I up through current conflicts and includes everything in between. Peacekeeping missions, it includes individuals who had served stateside. It essentially really covers all sorts of personal human experiences. And again, that idea is so that future generations will be able to hear directly from those individuals who had served and better understand the events that help make up our national history. Now, to be clear, we are not the official military archive. I think all of you understand that that is the National Archives, and therefore we are not necessarily a substitute for the historical record, but these stories are meant to supplement, to add color to the Black and white history that we have. That being said, when you think about the movies, the books, all of those stories that have war as a backdrop, it's the individual stories that you remember and not so much the facts or figures. The stories that come from seemingly ordinary people whose experiences have helped shape our history. And in actuality, those stories come in all sorts of different shapes and sizes. And our goal is to honor the lives of the American veteran, whether they had served in the motor pool or the mess hall. Really, the American story can only be told through 1,000 different voices and 1,000 different pictures and 1,000 different memories. Not all of them are going to be happy experiences. Some of them are troubling times. But again, that's how we are able to better learn from so that we can do better for the next generation. All right. This is where it's most fun for me because I get to talk about some of the different stories within our collection. All of the individuals up on this screen represent different individuals who had chosen to share their story in some way, shape, or form. We do have Medal of Honor recipients like Vernon Banks, who has the American flag waving behind him, and we have Navajo code talkers. We have poets. We have groundbreakers. We have, let's see, the gentleman with the red background. He's a chaplain who at one point questioned his faith. We have below him Wendy Cram, who was a shoo-in for the Olympics. Everyone thought he was going to get the gold medal in skiing up until Pearl Harbor occurred. And then it was clear that we weren't going to be going to the Olympics the same way. And so he volunteered for the ski troops. Up in the top right corner, we have Constance Anderson. Constance Anderson was born in Calgary, Alberta, and she grew up in Utah. So experiencing World War II during her formative teenage years, she watched people she knew in her community go off and fight in the war. And so she chose to volunteer her efforts when the time came around for the Korean War. Now, she originally wanted to join the Navy. She wanted to be in the waves, but the only branch that was able to take her as a non-US citizen was the Army. And through the Army, she was able to take her citizenship test and became an American. And in her story, she says she was so pleased to have the assignment here in Washington, D.C., that she loved the fact that she was able to go walk right down to the White House and have her photo taken, because having spent most of her life here, she finally felt as though she belonged. We have the couple that you see up on the screen is Tracy Sugarman. His collection is a very rich collection. It includes oral histories, but in addition to oral histories, he has letters back and forth between his new bride, Junie, and he has sketches. Great question in there, Kathleen. Why does the LOC partner with the Military Women's Memorial to coverage the data? So we actually do collaborate with the Military Women's Memorial pretty regularly, as well as the VA Center for Women Veterans and a lot of others. I realize that the Library of Congress is lacking women veteran stories, especially African-American women. You are so correct. And that is part of why we love to be able to feature those women. Oh no. Whenever possible on our website and through some of our print material. This is a screenshot of our website, and this is a really great way to get to know the project a little bit better. This is where you can find the portal to both the archival side as well as the participatory side of the project. So again, as you can see from the very bottom, this can be found at loc.gov/vets. And when you come on to this website, this is a complete archive of firsthand experiences and an invaluable resource to anybody who wants to know a little bit more about our country's military experience directly from those who are involved. So with that, you can watch thousands of hours of interviews. You can read personal journals. We actually just had a POW donation the other day, which was very, very cool. It was a journal, and included in that was a cookbook. So one of the ways that this individual had chosen to keep his mind busy was by creating new recipes within his journal. When you come to this page, you can go to the search function and you can check out different collections based off of whatever specificity it is that you're most interested in. I also would love to draw your attention to the fact that we have a new feature. It's called Serving Our Voices. It was, do we have access to video transcripts? Such a great question, Maggie. I will get to that in just one moment. Serving Our Voices is an area where we have had our reference librarian curate different collections around specific themes. And so we do have one that's titled Women of Five Wars. We also have some that's relevant to the art of war, which relates to how I met Melissa. And we have one based specifically on the GI Bill. So basically, our goal is to try to create different areas for people to entice them. So no matter what their interest is, we'd love to be able to showcase stories that may be relevant to them. Maggie asked a really great question about video transcripts. We work with the National Court Reporters Association and Foundation, and in exchange for educational credit, they have transcribed approximately 4,500 of our oral histories for us so far. So when you go on and you're looking at certain oral histories, some of them will in fact have the transcript in there as well. Let's see. So if you remember, I mentioned, we love to be able to promote some of those deficits within our collection, which is why we have Frances Thorpe featured prominently on our brochure. What you see up here is a copy of our brochure. We're happy to send those to anybody who's interested. And then that purple booklet is actually very, very important. I'm sure Carol Fowler would be able to share a little bit more as to why. And in addition to that, we have some draft questions. The purple booklet is what we call our field kit. And when you take a look in that purple booklet, which is located on our website, we have a PDF fillable copy. You can find instructions, you can find history, you can find best practices. Basically, it's your instruction guide as well as the required paperwork to be able to submit a collection to the Library of Congress. Is all content open source? Yeah, so we are a grassroots effort. And so we do ask for, Maggie, I love that you're asking these questions right before I get to those slides. That's well done. It's like you're a plant in this. We are completely reliant on volunteers. As much as I love to go out and to conduct these oral histories or to help others establish collections, I'm being told it's not technically my job. It is my favorite part of the job, but not technically my job. So we do ask for individuals and organizations across the country to sit down with the veterans in their lives and communities and help them tell their story. And really, that can be done in a number of different ways. Now, since we've been starting with this, we started, as I mentioned, in the year 2000. So we've been doing this for about 23 years. And those volunteers have been able to acquire over 116,000 collections, again, of veterans ranging from World War I all the way up through current conflicts and peacekeeping missions. Now, not everybody is going to be comfortable sharing their story through oral history. In fact, I was talking to Quinn. Sorry, Quinn, got to put you on the spot on this one. And I was sharing that part of what we were doing for our training for oral history best practices is we workshopped an item where basically all we had to do is break up into groups. And I had a partner, a woman I worked with, and I had to share with her for 3 minutes what I had done that weekend. And she couldn't ask any questions in between. So for some people, that's a very easy exercise. They're able to list off every single thing that they did. I am fairly confident and comfortable being able to talk to people. But when this was flipped on me, I froze. I told my colleague, all I did that weekend is I ate, I slept. I don't think I did anything. She looks at her watch and she just goes back and stares at me. It was an excellent exercise because for me, it showcased the fact that, again, not everybody is going to be comfortable with sitting down in front of a camera and sharing their life history. This isn't something that we ask of most people regularly. With that, we worked with an educator to help us come up with the mnemonic device of 30-20-10 to showcase the different ways that people could establish a collection through firsthand narratives within the Library of Congress. Now, the 30 represents a 30-minute or longer oral history. Now, some of you may be saying 30 minutes is a long time. I don't know if I could do that. Don't worry about it. One of the things that we have done is we have those draft questions, which was shown in one of the previous slides. And those draft questions cover the full arc of our veterans' lives. So it starts with, tell me who you were when you were a kid. You know, who in your family had served in the military, if anyone. You know, if somebody was drafted, of course, we understand that. But if you chose to serve, why did you choose? And why did you choose the branch that you chose? We talk about the military service and we round out with a reflection period, understanding, you know, what is it that you've done since your time in the military service? Those draft questions are meant to be just that. They are a draft. They are not a checklist. And so, you know, you don't even have to use those draft questions. A lot of times people know the story that they want to tell, but the draft questions do help to provide some prompts. The next way that somebody could establish a collection is through 20 pages or more of unpublished memoirs, journals, or diaries. And the last way is through 10 or more original photographs, letters, or pieces of two-dimensional artwork. Now, once you hit the minimum of one of those three, anything on top of that is just icing on the cake. So if you have a 48-minute oral history and one photo, that's great, that works. If you have an original diary from Vietnam and you only want to talk about it on film for 3 minutes, that's fine. There are no maximums to any of these. And when I say that, I really mean it, because we have received a collection from World War I that was 700 letters and 900 photos. And I have received a 12-hour oral history So there really are no maximums on this. We want to make this accessible and easy. You don't have to be Ken Burns. You don't have to have a red camera to be able to sit down and record these oral histories. You really just need a device like most of us carry around with us. You can use a cell phone, you can use a tablet. I would urge you to not be like my colleague Lisa up there and to actually look at it in a horizontal format rather than the vertical format as is shown on the screen. That is one of the best ways to do it. I tend to be a student of doing things with redundancy. So when we travel, we typically will have a tablet to record the oral history, and then we do the audio component on our phones just as a backup. So really, the biggest thing you need is a veteran who's willing to tell their story and you doing whatever you can to make them feel most comfortable. Okay, I don't know if anybody caught, but I had used the word original. We want original photographs. We want original journals, original diaries. I understand, you know, sometimes people will come to us and say, I'm not quite ready to part with this. And certainly we don't want to be the greedy archive that's taking from somebody who's not willing to give it at that point. However, there is a good reason as to why we ask for original content. One of the reasons is, you know, we are a research library, and so we'll absolutely have some enhanced research value by sharing those collections. Another reason is we provide a humidity controlled and climate controlled facility. This is a collection, an example of Albert John Carpenter, who was a 19-year-old college student when he headed over to France to fight in the Great War. And he took with him a pocket diary about the size of our cell phones today. And you can barely make it out, but behind the photos, it says, Diary October, the most eventful month of my life. And Carpenter goes on and he speaks about the bloodshed, the gassing. He talks about the mudding. He talks about so many things that we know the Great War to be about. And like so many veterans, when he came home, he put his diary away. He didn't look at it again. He never shared about his experiences. It wasn't until he passed away when his daughter-in-law, Shirley, had convinced the family that they were doing it a disservice. Now, this diary sat in the family closet. It was a closet that had the Bible, it had other precious documents, but it was a little worse for the wear. It was not bound at that point. It was all loose leaf, had some tears in it. And because it was a pocket diary, it sat in his pocket and it, you know, it got wet at different times. And so it had some water damage. As you can see, Shirley Carpenter went ahead and she convinced the family to donate the diary. And not long after that, Hurricane Katrina put 5.5 feet of water into their home. So this is an example of a collection that would have completely been lost to history had they not had the foresight to establish that collection. Now, the cool part, the folks in our preservation and conservation lab do just remarkable things. With this instance, one of the things that they did is they were able to, they have what's called a bookbinding machine. It looks medieval, but it brings everything back together. They were able to repair the tears with Japanese tissue paper. And the water damage, they were able to address that with a proprietary chemical under ultraviolet light. As you can see from the photo, you can finally read what was intended to be written on those pages. Now, that's all good and fine. But what I love about the fact that when somebody donates these stories is a lot of times we experience this ripple effect. Shirley Carpenter had shared with her new in-laws. She just thought this was the neatest thing, the fact that the diary was receiving such treatment, and it was actually going to be featured in an exhibit that we had. It was featured in an exhibit we had for World War I. She was sharing with her new in-laws, and as it turned out, her new in-laws had a relative who had served in the exact same unit as Albert John Carpenter. And so it was neat, the fact that they had this connection that they never knew that they had had. All right, so somebody had asked, is there an email address for us to submit histories over to LOC? If you have that, can you share that? Oh, it's such a good question. We are working on being able to have a system where you can directly load it digitally. However, we're not quite there yet. because we are not quite there yet, we do ask for things to be sent, tangible items. What that means is if you have done a recording on your cell phone, put it on a thumb drive and then send that purple booklet, all of the information in there, as well as the thumb drive, up to Capitol Hill. We ask, as you can see up on the screen, we ask for things to be sent via commercial courier. And that's kind of a weird thing, but because we're up here on Capitol Hill and there was that anthrax scare a few years ago, everything goes through an enhanced security screening. And therefore that completely wipes all of the thumb drives, all of the information, the media off of that. It bends the DVDs that we receive and the photos that we receive. It starts to kind of amplify the glue that's on the back. And so it starts to destroy and erode them a little bit. So we do ask for things to be sent via commercial courier, and it does take a little while. You know, I mentioned we receive quite a variety. Sometimes we get a 32-minute oral history, and sometimes we get those 700 letters and 900 photos. So it does take quite a while for our processing team to be able to review the items, to make sure that they meet those minimum requirements, and to make sure that they will be around here for the next generation and the generation after that. All right, we're back to the fun stuff. So it's possible that somebody on this call is saying, well, this is great, but I don't think I'm ready to share my story. I'm maybe somebody else. To anybody who's hesitant, I introduce you here to Heather Sandler. Heather Sandler came from a long line of military service. She chose the Navy, although her family members were predominantly Army, so they were not as thrilled with that choice. But here you can see her aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln loading armament on F-18s. And when she was invited to share her story for the Veterans History Project, at first she declined. She thought about it a little bit and she went back to the interviewer and she said, okay, I think I'm ready. And as you can see from the quote up on the screen, she barely wanted to talk about her service to her husband, her family, never mind putting it out there for anybody to read. But it was one of the most cathartic experiences of her life. And she no longer hides the fact that she's a veteran. Heather's story didn't stop, just like Albert John Carpenter's, and we talk about that ripple effect. Heather's story carried on. In fact, there was a really great VA blog that talked a little bit about what her experience was like. And then after that, the Atlanta Hartsfield Airport came to us and said, we're doing this really great exhibit that honors hometown heroes. Who do you have from Atlanta? And we said, we have a few collections we think you might be interested in. Heather Sandler was one of those individuals. And Heather, having 2 young sons, was able to bring them to the airport and show them the tangible items that showed exactly what she had done during her time in her military service. I come back to this because Heather said she no longer hides the fact that she's a veteran. We need your help to understand a little bit better as to why these individuals are perhaps not identifying as veterans and to help change that attitude. Now, I put Melissa on the spot with this one. This was an email she had sent out recently, so some of you probably have seen it in your inboxes, but it talks about why women do not necessarily identify as veterans. And it lists 6 different examples up there. Every single one of those individuals is a veteran who put up their right hand and they swore service to our country. So even if they just did 2 years, even if they served stateside, even if they were told they are not a veteran, we want to hear from them as to what their experiences were like, for better and for worse. So what is the library doing? Somebody had asked the question about, why don't you collaborate with the Military Women's Memorial? And as I mentioned, we do. We work hard to try to work with a lot of different organizations to elevate those stories and give, again, a safe platform for these individuals to share their experiences and to share their memories. Some of the different things that we do within the library. Yeah, if you weren't physically injured, they're not veterans. That's another one. And we see that not just from women, we see that from men as well. Or if they didn't get the combat badge. So a couple different things that we have done, and I put in the very beginning when we were talking about 688s, we have an excellent research guide. I'd be happy to share that again. That features the 688s. We've done a number of different panel discussions, including a collaboration with the VA Center for Women Veterans for the I Am Not Invisible 3.0, which we had on International Women's Day last year. And we also wanted to do one on motherhood in the military, what it was like for women who had served before, during, and after being a parent. We also do displays and exhibits throughout the library as well as online. Okay, so we are coming to the end. As you heard from Heather Sandler's story, the collections that we receive here at the Library of Congress do not just sit on the shelves here accumulating dust, but rather they're used every single day. Just last year, we had over 3 million hits on our website, and we had a number of researchers who came into the library to conduct research within our collections. Now, one of the things that's kind of interesting is within that purple booklet, that field kit, is we talk about copyright. The library is the home to our copyright office. It's directly next door over in the Madison building. And so we're sort of sticklers when it comes to copyright. So what I mean by that is when you read that area where you're signing the veterans release form or the interviewer release form, you see that we acknowledge that we are the keepers of the stories, but we are not the owners of these stories. And so if we have a Ken Burns or a Liza Mundy come to us and want to share these collections and share these stories, we send them back to the veteran and back to the next of kin to make sure it's done so in a safe and appropriate manner. Perfect example of that was with Liza Mundy's Code Girls. If anybody has read that book, it's awesome. I will just give you the Reader's Digest version of it, if you will. Women during World War II were asked to serve as cryptoanalysts, and if they had shown an affinity for math and science, they may have received a postcard asking just 2 questions. Are you good at puzzles? And are you engaged to be married? And if they answered correctly, they may have been recruited for part of this top secret, crypto analysts, predominantly with the waves here in Washington, D.C. But the whole time they were supposed to tell anybody who asked that they were merely secretaries. So some of these women didn't keep their secret for 70 plus years. Some of them spoke about it a little bit earlier. And so when Liza Mundy was trying to unearth these stories, she came to us and we were able to send her back to the veterans, back to the next of kin to get some of her questions answered. So she wrote this really beautiful book, writing, sharing these stories of different individuals. And we invited her out for a book talk. But the year after that, we decided to have the first ever Code Girls reunion here at the Library of Congress, where we had 5 women all in their 90s come out and for the first time ever sit down and share with each other what their experiences were like. We also invited family members to come out because, again, a lot of times some of these individuals didn't even know that their aunts, their grandmothers, their mothers were involved in this. And so now being able to sit down and compare notes was just a phenomenal experience for them. Anybody know Bill Nye, the Science Guy? Okay. So Bill Nye, his father was a POW and his mother was a code girl. She was a crypto analyst. And so if you're searching within the Veterans History Project, you will come across the Jenkins Nye collection. And you'll be able to learn a little bit more about his roots. We talk about those ripple effects and the connections that are built when you do get an opportunity to sit down and really get to know somebody on a different level. The title is Code Girls by Liza Mundy. Now, last June, I went to my brother's wedding, and as I was flying back, I was sitting on the airplane, I looked at my cell phone, and I realized that Bill Nye and Liza Mundy built a very intimate connection and actually got married just this past June. Now, the last reason, so as mentioned, the stories do not sit here on the shelves accumulating dust. They are used regularly. We have over 800 books at this point that cite Veterans History Project as a primary resource. We have documentaries that are based off of it, and we have exhibits not only here at the Library of Congress, but elsewhere. The last story is a kind of a far-fetched one, but a neat one to share, and it's the story of Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kettles, who had served in Vietnam as a UH-1D Huey helicopter pilot. And he volunteered for an ambush mission to go in, and he's responsible for saving 40 men's lives. And he sat in Ypsilanti and somebody asked to interview him, and his interview is quite fun because it's done at his home and you can see his wife in the kitchen is making breakfast as he's unraveling these maps and telling this story of saving these 40 men's lives. And so the interviewer started to go to each of these different men that he is credited for saving. And each and every one of them said, I would not be here today if it were not for Kettles. So he took it to his local member of Congress. And not long after that, 50 years after the fact, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Kettles received our nation's highest honor with the Medal of Honor. And while it is a rare exception, it does showcase the power of what somebody is doing when they listen to these stories and get to know individuals on a different level. And so now, on behalf of the Library of Congress, the American people who use the collections, and most importantly, our future generations who will be able to have access to these collections, I want to say thank you again for joining me on International Women's Day. I haven't been as good at checking the chat, but I will definitely go back and look for questions, but feel free to pop them into the chat right now. And I'll put the book is Code Girls in the chat. And there's my email in case anybody would like it. Any questions, comments, anybody want to share?
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry. So I'm Maggie. So I've been trying to get a video history project off the ground for the last couple of years here in North Texas and using it for artistic extension with our students to engage them with our veterans and their stories. So
Yes.
yes, I'm pretty familiar with what y'all are doing. And I know that you used to come and do, well, that was like Storycorps. How much do you work with Storycorps? And I know that they have sort of a tracking thing where they'll come and do training for people who are interested in doing things in accordance, because y'all have very stringent guidelines on what you can and cannot do, as does Storycorps. So is that something that's still going on, that we can get somebody to come out and train people who are interested in collecting these stories?
Yes, and actually your question leads beautifully into Audrey's question over here. It's like you guys are talking back there. So one of the things that we can do is, if somebody has a group of 25 people or more, we can send somebody from the Oral History Association or the American Folklore Society out to you to train that group of individuals who's interested in helping with the interviews. And those are typically approximately a 2-hour process, because that allows an opportunity for us to do some of those exercises that we had talked about. Alternately, if somebody says, we've got 10 people, we really want to do the training, reach out and we can do something virtually. And while, it's always best to be in person, we're happy to be able to make something work virtually. And that goes for nonprofits as well. Absolutely, we'd love to have those volunteers. Something we found is for nonprofits, for instance, the Red Cross. This feeds directly into their project for the military support. Kat, I see your hand is up.
Outstanding presentation. Thank you both so much for putting this on, particularly today of all day. We each have a role in encouraging women to step forward and claim being veterans. Most people don't realize that it takes 5 people in back support to support one person that's downrange. So whether it's, a 2 or 3 years, it doesn't matter how long a woman has served, whether it's in peacetime or in the last 30 years, we all need to and can be very vocal on a continual basis to say, you did a significant role, whether it's short-term or long-term, in protecting this country. And so few people step up. I've been a volunteer veteran advocate after I got out of the Army, and so many women do not recognize as being veterans. It's shocking. I just went to a veterans summit yesterday in North Carolina. So I applaud you for doing this, and I'll be submitting my own stories in the women's memorial.
Excellent. And we do, you know, as was mentioned, we collaborate with them pretty regularly. And so we do share stories like that if and when somebody is able to do so. So if somebody were to come to us with a collection, they can absolutely share it with them. Maggie, you asked a question about Storycorps that I didn't address directly, and I want to make sure to do that. So we, with the Veterans History Project, are underneath the umbrella of the American Folklife Center here at the Library of Congress. And Storycorps, the collections do feed here to the Library of Congress through the American Folklore Center as well. There is a difference as an individual company. They have some slightly different guidelines, as you alluded to, and a slightly different setup when it comes to things like copyright. So they're both great organizations. We collaborate whenever possible. And absolutely, we would be happy to share between the two. How do I get started? Was a question through the chat from Vivian. And then Maggie, I saw you went off mute, so I'll pop back over to you. Okay. So Vivian had asked how she gets started. One of the best ways to get started is to go to that website that's listed up there, that loc.gov/vets. And I would encourage you to just sort of poke around. One of the first screens that pops up is participate. When you log on to that screen, you can see not only the field kit that we had talked about, but there's also it's just under 8-minute video. And that 8-minute video will take you through a lot of what we discussed today, condensed down into 8 minutes, and is a great reminder of different ways you can go ahead and get started and get involved in the project. Is there an option to go to the main office in DC and share stories from there? JT, that's a wonderful question, excuse me, I'm focused on the collections. I will once again showcase the main reading room. So the room that I'm in right now is, this is called our alcove space. This is the middle room of our alcoves. And on either side of these doors, our 14th Librarian of Congress, who is our first woman and our first person of color, Dr. Carla Hayden, gifted the Veterans History Project these two rooms on either side. And those are alcove spaces that feature the background. Here is the main reading room. These alcove spaces are studios for us. So we do occasionally have an opportunity to bring people here to the Library of Congress to record their oral history with that as the background. Battalion logs, Seabees, lots of original black and white photos. That was a great question, Shelley, and you didn't miss it because I missed that question. We love Seabees. We love having Seabees share their story. We have, if you go onto that website, you'll be able to pull up thousands of stories from Seabees and original black and white photos. However, I do want to be clear, Shelley, sometimes people will just sort of have an affinity for things like that. And they'll go to yard sales and they'll pick up like a photo album and they don't know what to do with it after that. Those are considered orphan collections here. And so because we are those sticklers for copyright and we want to make sure that people feel it's okay to be able to share their story, we can really only accept the collections that are donated to us from those individuals or their family members. World War II battalion logs, we have a considerable amount of logs. However, each of the collections within the Veterans History Project is based off of one individual's experience rather than a battalion's experience or a unit's experience. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much to some degree. And there's a whole, I just recently found, I mean, since last November, I found a huge box of, I can't even tell you what else is in there. It's just, I'm still digging through, and I'm in California and the box is in New York. So I'm digging through sort of spiritually digging through, but I did get my hands in there. And there are even some, you know, those original, you know how they used to have carbon paper and typewriters and all that? There's a whole bunch of those logs too. And found out that my father had been all over the world and he never said a word about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you feel you're getting to know him better now through looking?
I feel goosebumps. I feel like I met the other side of a person that I never saw. Like I never knew he was a writer. I never knew he was a poet. I never knew that he'd been to Okinawa. I never knew he was in combat. All he ever said was, "Oh, I helped build a couple of airstrips."
Mm-hmm.
So it's like a whole new life, you know, for me. And I'm kind of really resonating with children, people in the military who don't know, only see one side. They know there's a whole other story, but you can't put your hand through the door until you start seeing different pictures. So yeah, I'll trying to figure out what to do with all of this stuff.
No, that's great. Shelley, thank you for sharing that. That's awesome. I can't wait to hear more after you discover more and more.
I'm going to look at it again in July, and I will be in touch with you.
Excellent.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shelley. All right. Can I give another call out for any questions or any stories anybody wants to share really quickly?
I'd like to share something right now.
Yes. Yes, please.
My name's Ina, and I am from Northern Michigan right now. And
Ina?
I am a Navy veteran, and I joined 50 years and 1 month ago.
Woo.
Anyway, I'm on a committee now. I'm pretty excited about this. We are going to have our 2nd annual Women's Veterans Conference in October, and I would love to have you come and share just what you said today. I think it'll get so many women excited about this and to share their stories. Any chance that you can come?
I'm going to give a tentative yes, because if
Yay!
it's not, one of my amazing colleagues would do just a phenomenal job as well. But I will do everything within my power to do that, because that sounds like a wonderful opportunity. And thank you and congratulations on your 50 and 1.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, we'll keep in touch then, Carrie. We're having a meeting tomorrow, a Zoom meeting, and I will bring that up to have you or a colleague coming to up North Michigan. It'll be flannel shirts and blue jeans in the UAW Black Lake Conference Center.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Carrie.
Teresa, did you have something? Did I see your hand go up?
You did, and thank you for that. On the same sheet as Ina, we have our 2nd annual conference coming up with Department of Veteran Services. And I was thinking the same thing. I was going to shoot you an email. Let's call it out here on June the 10th. If you're available, that would be phenomenal. This is inspiring, and it is something that we need to get more women involved and get women to identify as veterans. Be front and forward, front and center.
So we talked about the fact that there's, you know, we're always searching for stories of really anybody out there, but certainly stories of service from women. We've seen some growth, but not a huge amount of growth over the past couple of years. The 10% of what I mentioned, our collections reflect 6.7% of those are stories of service from women. So we really do want to try to focus on fixing that deficit. And so whatever we can do to support that, we'd love to be able to have further conversation about that. Thanks, Teresa.
I'll shoot you an email, and if you're available on June the 10th, let us know.
Awesome.
Thank you kindly.
Thank you. Other questions, comments? I like Dr. Johnson's coffee cup up there. It's been making me want a coffee this whole time. All right. Well, seeing no more questions, I will turn the rest of my time back over to Melissa and just say thank you so much again to everybody. And I look forward to connecting in the future.
Thank you, Carrie. Thanks for an amazing presentation. And I hope we will see much more women submitting their information. I know it's a lot to gather all that information, especially when you want originals. So I thank you, all of you, for joining us today. And this is been recorded. And once we get it uploaded to YouTube, we will send you all the link as you registered for this event. Carrie, I'll send that to you as well. And please check out our website for all of our upcoming webinars as well. And all of you enjoy International Women's Day. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.